Today we're going to be making homemade buttermilk biscuits. A couple tools or things that you should have ahead of time. You're going to need a rolling pin. You're going to need a small round cookie cutter, a biscuit cutter. You can use a small cup, anything like that for whatever size you want your buttermilk biscuits to be. You also need a brush and some melted butter because we're going to brush the tops of the biscuits when we're done. And a mixing bowl and a spoon. You can use a greased cookie sheet, or I just like to use parchment. Either one's good. You can use it either way. Preheat your oven to 450. Now, I don't go to town all the time. I might go to town shopping every 2 to 3 weeks and pick up a couple essentials. So one thing I did do, they are buttermilk biscuits. I just get the dried cultured buttermilk blend, and it's just a powder. And it kind of has the little measurements that you do on the back. So for each cup, you'd use 4 tablespoons. For 2/3 cup would be 2.5 tablespoons. This recipe actually calls for 1.5 cups, so 6 tablespoons of that. You would use that, you'd mix the actual dried buttermilk in with your dried ingredients, and then when you go to add what would be when you'd add the buttermilk, you'd go ahead and add your water. You can also just use regular buttermilk. I just don't always have that on hand. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing we do is we're going to want to mix our dried ingredients together. So it calls for 4 cups of flour. And we're going to also go ahead and add the buttermilk powder at this time. If you're using liquid powder or buttermilk, you'd add that when you'd add the buttermilk. So we're going to go ahead and add this in now. And those directions, they are on that dried buttermilk. And then you're going to go ahead and do 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Just going to go ahead and get these out of the way here. You're just going to go ahead and you're going to want to mix your dry ingredients together. And then we're going to start cutting in our shortening here. And that's what the pastry blender's for. Believe it or not, I didn't always have one of these, and my son and I want to make buttermilk biscuits, and we just kind of used a fork, and we did get pretty close results. So if you don't have one of these, we just kind of used a fork and kind of mashed it around in there a little bit. This definitely makes life a lot easier. So just give that a good stir. We've got our dry ingredients mixed. Now you're going to do this. You're going to put half of it in, about half of your shortening, and it calls for a 2/3 cup. So we're going to go ahead and put about half of that in there and start mixing it in. And we're just going to go ahead and you just kind of cuts it in there. You can kind of see some of the pieces in there. Maybe hopefully the camera's picking that up. So we just go ahead and just going to cut that in a little bit. We're going to go ahead and add the other half. We're just cutting it in. And take your spoon and scrape that out. You can kind of see the little lumps or chunks in there. The next step is you're going to add your buttermilk. Like I said, I was using a powdered buttermilk, so I just have to add the water at this point, which is 1.5 cups. If you're using the liquid buttermilk, it's still 1.5 cups. So we're going to go ahead, add our liquid. We're just going to kind of mix it in there. then I always like to go in there with my hands for just a little bit, just to give it, you only need about 30 seconds. You're just trying to get it kind of mixed up. It doesn't take long. You don't. Just kind of got some of that flour on the bottom. You're just trying to work that in there. I'm hoping to, after the buttermilk biscuits are done, do a couple more videos, one with homemade sausage gravy, and one might not sound the best, but it is really good. It's kind of a staple we grew up on because it's pretty cheap and easy to make, which is cream tuna that goes really good with buttermilk biscuits. So I'm hoping to get to that here a little later today. There, now you can see we got kind of a nice dough. It's not real sticky anymore or anything. We're going to go ahead we're just going to roll this out. You're going to want to roll it out to be about 3/4 of an inch or so. What's nice is this isn't like a lot of cookie doughs or a lot of bread doughs. It's not super sticky, so that's kind of makes it a little bit easier to work with here. So I'm just rolling it out. And don't be afraid to, as I cut out my first biscuits, I'll kind of push it all back together and get a few more other so I don't waste the extra. But you can kind of see the little layers in there. They'll kind of pull like that. That's what makes them flaky. That was cutting in that shortening in there. So, okay, we're at a good depth. So we're just going to go ahead and you're going to cut them out. And like I said, you can either use a grease cookie sheet or I just put mine in parchment. I'm going to get the rest of these cut out here and I'll catch up with you at that point. So I'm just finishing up the last of this here. As you see, I just kind of kept smashing what was left after cutting them out. And then we get quite a few extra. And I actually got this many more here. They might not be as pretty as the first ones, but they all work and they all eat. You're not left with quite as much left over. I could keep going with this. I'm happy with this. So the next step is you want to use a little bit of melted butter and you just want to go over the tops. Help them turn nice and brown. Like I said, preheat your oven to 450. After I get the tops of these butter, I'm going to put them in. They take on average between 12 and 15 minutes, but I do know that ovens vary, so definitely make sure you're keeping an eye on them. This is very easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, but still, you'd hate to walk away, set your timer for 12 minutes, and here your oven takes 10. burn your biscuits. So I'm just finishing up here, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop these in the oven. And I will catch up with you when they're done and show you the end result. If you have any questions or anything, please comment. I will help you out the best that I can. And if you please like, share, and subscribe if you're interested in learning more stuff like this. And I'd be more than willing to show you. If there's anything you want to see in particular too, go ahead, leave a comment. And I'll see if I can help you out with that. But I'm going to go ahead and stick these in the oven and catch up with you when they're done. It's been about 12 minutes, give or take. They're done. Got a little bit of brown on the bottom there. You can see that they're going to be flaky. So those are your buttermilk biscuits. And like I said, these here you can see, these look a little bit different. Those are when I kept kind of smushing them back together and rolling them out again. Anyway, I do have a little bit of a recipe here. Mike's probably going to hand me the phone. So here's my buttermilk biscuit recipe. If you do have any questions, definitely let me know. I know that I did use that powdered buttermilk, and the directions are on there. So it ended up being 6 tablespoons of the here's the oven, the powdered buttermilk, and you just mix that in with the dry ingredients, and then you add the 1.5 cups of water when it comes to where it says in here to add your buttermilk. I think I got that. This is northern Minnesota, so prices may vary, but I think I picked that up for about $5, give or take a little bit. You do have to you do have to refrigerate that after you open it. It's definitely worth it. Like I said, I get to tell maybe every 2 to 3 weeks to get some essentials, and just to have that on hand helps a lot. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to clean up from this and go ahead, and I'm going to make some sausage gravy, and you stay out of there till the sausage gravy is done, and we'll catch up with you later.